Good morning, good morning. It is time for day 3 of the Heart Like David Challenge. And today I want to start off just by telling you I took some NyQuil last night, so I had a little trouble waking up, but I got my coffee and I'm ready to roll. So I want you to put a coffee emoji in the chat if you have your coffee. And I don't even know if there is such a thing. So if there isn't, just write coffee or something like that in the chat, so we can know you're ready to go. It's bright and early on this wonderful Wednesday morning, and I'm all excited to learn a little bit more about David and how we can get a heart like his. And if you're anything like me or most of the people in the world, there's a key to this. A key that many of us would like to deny in the flesh, but it's important to own up to this. And that is that if we're going to have a heart like David, it's going to have to start with healing. Like God is going to have to actually heal our heart. So I came across a verse this morning that I've heard many times before, but it's Psalm 147 verse 3. And this is really kind of the basis for this whole thing. Psalm 147 verse 3 says, "He heals the brokenhearted and bandages their wounds." He heals the brokenhearted and bandages their wounds. David wrote this. David wrote this. So if we're going to have a heart like David, then we have to have an understanding that he's the one, God is the one, that heals our hearts. And it's okay to need that healing. But it's important that we go to him for that healing. So as we get ready to jump in today, I want to go back to the 2 challenges we've done so far. So we started with day 1, that he was a shepherd alone in the field with the sheep, but he was always out there with God. He was never truly alone. He was out there with God, working with God all day long. And the challenge was to take God with you all day long, wherever you were, to take God with you, to allow him to be a part of whatever it is you're doing, to allow him to lead you in whatever it is that you're doing. Okay? And so that was the first day's challenge. And then yesterday's challenge, yesterday's topic was that David valued his responsibilities even above his own life. And we talked about how we're working not for a paycheck, not for a boss, but we're working for the Lord. So that no matter what we're doing, and I even brought up the scripture where Paul is talking to slaves, and he's telling them, don't worry about your earthly master. You're in that position. You work for the Lord. You work for the Lord. I think back to Joseph when he was working as a servant under Potiphar, and yet Potiphar found him so amazing and everything he did was blessed that he put him in charge of everything. Okay? So if we work for the Lord, then much better things are going to happen for us. Okay? So I want you to put some fire emojis in the chat if you worked for the Lord yesterday. If you, whatever you were doing, if you're a housewife or you're at a job or whatever you were doing, if you mindfully thought, I am not working for myself, I'm not working for a boss, I'm not working for a paycheck, I'm not just working to get it done, but I want it to be done really, really well, because I'm working as if the Lord is right here with me watching me. Because of course he is, right? So if you did really well at that yesterday, I want you to put 5 fire emojis in the chat. If you did really terrible, I just want you to put 1 fire emoji. But if you were somewhere in between, I want you to measure it out and let us know how you did yesterday. For me, I would probably put a 3, to be honest with you. I had a really hectic day. And I think I did pretty good with the hectic day, but it was a really hectic day. Just a lot of, my secretary was sick yesterday, and so she didn't make it in, which always challenges me at work. It's amazing. You don't understand how much people do sometimes until they're not there to do it. And yesterday was one of those days, but I do believe that I did pretty good. So I would give myself a 3 because I know I could have done a lot better. So Great job on that yesterday. And today, today's topic is, if we want a heart like David, then one of the things we have to understand about David, first, he was a shepherd alone in the field, but he was never truly alone because he always had God with him wherever he went. Second, he valued his responsibilities as if he were working for the Lord. And the third thing is that David actually did get his value from God and not from people. He actually did get his value from God and not from people. How many of you know that's important? If you think that's important, I want you to put a 1 in the chat. Just put a 1 and maybe a bunch of 1s. But if you think it's important that we get our value from God and not from people, put some 1s in the chat. And I'm going to show you how I know that he did that. Because first, we got to be reminded that he was the youngest of 8 brothers. The youngest of 8 brothers. If you're a younger sibling, you know how difficult it is. You know how difficult it is to try and not get beat down by them, right? By your older siblings. Sometimes it's just so ingrained in there that I'm the little brother, I'm the little sister, I'm not worth much. They don't trust me with this, they don't trust me with that, they don't think I'm capable, they don't, whatever. And there's a lot of challenges, right? When you're a younger sibling, there's a lot of challenges. And so for David, his challenge was he was sent out to be the shepherd of the sheep. Now, he's obviously capable, or he wouldn't be out there alone. Okay? So they think he's capable, but he's out there, he's lonely. He's not doing the cool things that his brothers are doing. Like his 3 oldest brothers are part of Saul's army. Like they have made it. Like you didn't get into Saul's army just because you had a pulse and you were a guy. That's not how it worked. Like they had earned their stripes and they were in Saul's army, right? And so David's probably thinking, well, I wish I could do the cool stuff, like them. I wish I could be with them. I wish my dad trusted me with more than just these sheep. All they do is wander about. How hard can this be? It'd be easy for him to downplay his value and his worth. But I don't believe David did that. I don't believe he did that at all. I think he got his worth straight from God. So let's look at the passage. It's 1 Samuel 16, and I'm going to read several verses here, starting with verse 1, all the way to verse 13. It says, "Now the Lord said to Samuel, 'You have mourned long enough for Saul. I have rejected him as king of Israel. So fill your flask with olive oil and go to Bethlehem. Find a man named Jesse who lives there, for I have selected one of his sons to be my king.'" So the prophet Samuel was given this huge task. He anointed Saul as king, but Saul disobeyed the Lord. He's rejected by God now, and Samuel's been given the task to go and anoint a new king. Okay? But Samuel asked, "How can I do that? If Saul hears about it, he'll kill me." "Take a heifer with you," the Lord replied, "and say that you have come to make a sacrifice to the Lord. Invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you which of his sons to anoint for me." So Samuel did as the Lord instructed. And when he arrived at Bethlehem, I'm going to skip some of this. We'll go down to verse 6. So he's got Jesse and his sons at the meal, and when they arrived, it says Samuel took one look at Eliab and thought, "Surely this is the Lord's anointed." Eliab was the oldest son. It's like, surely this is the Lord's anointed. But the Lord said to Samuel, "Don't judge by his appearance or height." Okay, so obviously he was a good-looking guy. He was a big guy. Don't judge by that, for I have rejected him. The Lord doesn't see things the way you see them. People judge by outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Okay? And whose heart did he choose? He chose David's heart. That's why we're trying to figure out how to get a heart like David. Then Jesse told his son Abinadab to step forward and walk in front of Samuel. But Samuel said, "This is not the one the Lord has chosen." Next, Jesse summoned Shemaiah. But Samuel said, "Neither is this the one the Lord has chosen." And those were the 3 that are in Saul's army. Okay? You would think that they would be the ones, but they were not the ones. In the same way, all 7 Notice how it says all 7. How many sons were there? There were 8. David was completely forgotten by his family. Completely forgotten. In the same way, all 7 of Jesse's sons were presented to Samuel. But Samuel said to Jesse, "The Lord has not chosen any of these." Then Samuel asked, "Are these all the sons you have?" And then Jesse, I think he's like, "Oh, wait, there is one more." So he says, there is still the youngest, but he's out in the field watching the sheep and goats. Like, we're not going to bother you with the time it's going to take to bring him in. And so he says, "Send for him at once. We will not sit down to eat until he arrives." So they're waiting to eat. And now they got to go send for somebody out in the field. I mean, this probably took quite a while because they had to find him. They had to figure out where he's at, and then they had to bring him back. And he had to round up the sheep while he's out. I mean, who knows how long it took, right? So this is a big inconvenience. So Jesse sent for him. He was dark and handsome with beautiful eyes. And the Lord said, "This is the one, anoint him." So as David stood there among his brothers, this is just precious. Samuel took the flask of olive oil he had brought and anointed David with the oil. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David from that day on. Then Samuel returned to Ramah. Okay, so David, the point today is that David actually did get his value from God and not from people. And there's not a tremendous amount of evidence for that in that little passage, but that little passage is so key because we know the result of him trusting God and getting his value from God, because God actually gave him his kingship. Who gave it to him? If you know the answer to that question, which I just gave you, then put it in the chat. Who gave David his kingship? Just write it in the chat. This is important. It's important that we understand this, because so many times we strive and we work and we try and yet everything meaningful comes from God. Scripture tells us every good and perfect gift comes down from the Father of lights, the Father above. And so that's super important. But I want to go to where I believe the real evidence is that David trusted God and got his value from God. It's in Psalm 139. Many of you have heard some of this psalm. Maybe you've read this psalm many, many times. But this is a psalm of David. And it's a psalm that shows us very practically that David got his value from God alone. So we know practically his value came from God because he wouldn't have been king on his own. Okay? He trusted God with his value. Okay? And he got his value from God as king. And everything that came with that, and all those victories that came. He even said, "The Lord will give you into my hands today." Right to Goliath's face, right? So the Lord, he trusted the Lord. He didn't trust what the others thought. He didn't trust even what he thought. He trusted the Lord, okay? And he got all of his value from him. But here's my favorite passage for this. It's Psalm 139, and I'm going to start with verse 13. I'm going to read through verse 18. So check this out. David wrote this, okay? "You made all the delicate inner parts of my body and knit me together in my mother's womb." Where's he getting his value from? He's getting it from God. He's given him the credit for every little bit. "Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Your workmanship is marvelous. How well I know it." Let me stop there for a second. Do you tell God, when talking about yourself, that his workmanship is marvelous? Or do you curse yourself sometimes? Sometimes we just devalue ourselves without even realizing it. We say things like, "Oh, I'm so stupid." We say things like, "Oh, I'm worthless." Or we just beat ourselves down with words, with thoughts. Listen to what David said again. Listen to this verse. It's verse 14. "Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Your workmanship is marvelous. How well I know it. God's workmanship is marvelous. David knew it. And if you want a heart like David, you're going to have to get this concept down. It means no more beating yourself up. I know that's going to be hard. For some of us, that's going to be extra hard. But it means no more beating ourselves up. We need to build ourselves up. We are God's masterpiece. Ephesians 2:10 says that. You are God's masterpiece, created in Christ Jesus to do the good works that he prepared beforehand for you to do. So unless we rise to the level of the masterpiece God created us to be, we'll never accomplish the works that God prepared before for us to do. Okay? So let me continue. You watched me as I was being formed in utter seclusion, as I was woven together in the dark of the womb. You saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed. How precious are your thoughts about me, O God. How precious are your thoughts about me, O God. They cannot be numbered. I can't even count them. They outnumber the grains of sand. And when I wake up, you are still with me. God made us for a purpose. He created us with passion. He created us as a work of art, a masterpiece, a one of a kind. No one else is like you. No one else is like you. And God don't make no mistakes. He doesn't. He made you perfect. Okay? Now it's up to you to quit beating yourself down. It's up to you to start building yourself up in him. Go to Psalm 139, verses 13 to 18, over and over and over. Read that. Tell yourself, and look at verse 14 especially, over and over and over. He made you a masterpiece. So here's the challenge. Here's the challenge today. Quit thinking devaluing thoughts. Quit thinking devaluing thoughts. And anytime that you do, I want you to turn around. I want you to say something like what David said here. No, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. No, I was created in the image of God. No, I was made as a masterpiece by God himself. And verse 14 especially, thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Your workmanship is marvelous. How well I know it. I like how he said wonderfully complex, because we are complex, right? And sometimes we don't fully understand ourselves. And that's okay, because God understands us. And that's why he says your workmanship is marvelous. So when you start thinking those devaluing thoughts, what I want you to do today, if we're going to get a heart like David, we need to say, no, I'm not worthless. No, I'm not stupid. God's workmanship is marvelous. God's workmanship is marvelous. And then maybe if you just fully don't understand what's going on or why you did what you did, just ask the Lord to help you. Say, Lord, I know I'm complex. Help me understand myself. Help me to understand myself. But I know your workmanship is marvelous. So that's the challenge today. If you're up for it, put a big thumbs up in the chat. Share this with someone and tag your friends on it so that more people can see it. God bless you. Have an amazing day. We'll see you tomorrow morning. And tomorrow morning, I'm actually going to be on at 6:20 a.m. because I need to leave the house by 6:30-ish. So 6:20 a.m. tomorrow. Make a note of that. I'll put it in the reminder tonight when I put it out. But God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow.